The world never fears the storm that arrives screaming. It fears the silence that comes before it. The pause where everything holds its breath because something unseen is moving. That silence is you. They thought you were gone, erased, written out of history before your story even had its chance to end. But erasure is only possible for the forgettable, and you were never that. What they mistook for defeat was incubation. What they mistook for weakness was waiting, and now the waiting is over. Welcome back, you beautiful disaster. Yes, you, the one they thought they had erased, the one they were certain would never rise again, the one they believed would crumble under the weight of everything they threw at you. And yet here you are, still standing, still unbroken, carrying that dangerous calm that only comes after walking through fire and realizing that flames no longer burn you. Do you know why they fear you? It isn't because you shout louder than the rest, and it isn't because you flash your power like a weapon. It's because you are still here. It's because you survived everything they did to bury you. You survived when survival wasn't supposed to be possible. And in surviving, you became something far more terrifying to them than they could ever admit. You became untouchable. Look at what happened. Look at what they'll never confess, though every one of them felt it in their bones. Look who finally picked up the phone. Look who finally dialed that number, pressed call, and rewrote the ending to a story they had already signed, sealed, and declared finished. Look who shattered their illusion of control with nothing more than 3 minutes and 47 seconds of unfiltered truth. It was you, the beautiful, strategic, untouchable masterpiece they underestimated until it was far too late. And here is what they don't want anyone to know. They had the resources, the numbers, the armies, the endless supply of money. They were outgunning you, outspending you, outmanning you in every conceivable way. They had private investigators shadowing your every step, lawyers waiting like vultures with sharpened teeth, journalists and judges on their payroll, connections that stretched from boardrooms to backrooms. They had offshore accounts hidden in the shadows, maps and traps carefully drawn, exits blocked before you even reached the door. They thought they had you cornered. They thought they had written the last chapter of your story. But they forgot the oldest truth of all, the one no amount of power can erase. When you strip a human being of everything, when you push them beyond the edges of fear, beyond the craving for approval, beyond the fragile desire to play fair, you don't create a victim, you create a weapon. And that weapon, sharpened by suffering, doesn't need an army or billions in the bank. It only needs one strike, perfectly placed. For you, that strike was a phone call. 3 minutes, 47 seconds. That was all it took to dismantle an empire that had been built on lies, cemented with intimidation, and protected by money. Because while they were busy counting billions, while they were sipping espresso in penthouse offices, while they were laughing behind walls of glass at how powerless you must feel, you were doing something else, something infinitely more dangerous. You were watching them. You were listening. You were taking notes. Every conversation, every threat, every bribe, every smug intimidation tactic. They thought you were too small, too weak, too afraid to remember. But you remembered. You didn't just live through it. You recorded it like evidence. You weren't building a case for their courts, because you knew their courts were already bought. You were building a case in the court of consequences, a place where their money couldn't silence the truth. So when you dialed that number, when your voice finally carried the words you had kept buried in silence, everything shifted. Their empire cracked, their fortress shook, their certainty faltered. Because the one thing they never accounted for was your courage. They believed money was power, surveillance was control, fear was eternal. But you knew something they never learned in their ivory towers and gleaming boardrooms. Real power isn't about how much you own. It's about precision. It's about timing. It's about knowing exactly when to release the truth and where to place the strike. Because sometimes, one perfectly aimed truth can topple 1,000 carefully constructed lies. That Tuesday morning at 9:17, while they were sipping their third coffee, while they were laughing about how tightly they had you cornered, you picked up a phone that cost less than their lunch and ended their world. Imagine it. The moment their assistant walked in, face pale and hands trembling. The moment their lawyer called, voice quivering despite years of training. The moment realization spread across their faces like a sickness that all the money, all the connections, all the carefully paid shadows following you day and night, none of it mattered anymore. Because you hadn't struck them where they were fortified. You struck them where they were exposed. And the cruel, poetic truth is that they were the ones who revealed those weaknesses to you. Every time they flexed their power, they showed you where they were afraid. Every stalker they sent taught you their system. Every frozen account was a lesson in financial warfare. Every threat was a roadmap of where to aim. They thought they were breaking you, but they were training you. They thought they were humiliating you, but they were arming you. Without knowing it, they had handed you a masterclass in their own destruction. And you, patient, quiet, steady, absorbed it all. You weren't the desperate opponent they thought you were. You were the student who studied every move, not to play their game, but to burn their entire board down. They signed their own downfall, funded their own ruin, and trained the very destroyer who would dismantle them. That phone call was not the dramatic movie version they'll try to spin. It was not loud. It was not violent. It was steady. Your hands may have shaken, but your voice was iron. You didn't waste time on threats. You didn't bargain. You didn't beg. You delivered facts, sharp as blades, precise as arrows, undeniable as gravity. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't need decoration. It doesn't need to be dressed in theatrics. It only needs to be spoken at the right moment, to the right ear. And you had become a master of timing. Who did you call? Was it the journalist they thought they owned, but who still carried a conscience? Was it the investigator who had been waiting for a crack in their armor? Was it a family member they betrayed on their climb to the top? Or was it simply the right person at the right moment when their empire was vulnerable? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you knew. You knew exactly who to call, because while they were watching your every move, you were mapping their entire network. You were tracing every thread, cataloging every enemy, connecting every dot they thought was invisible. And here's the irony. The powerful make more enemies than allies on their way to the top. They leave bodies behind. They crush voices. They destroy lives. And they assume money will silence those ghosts. They assume fear will keep them in line. They assume time will erase the memories. But you remembered everything. You became the keeper of their sins, the librarian of their secrets, the living archive of their corruption. And when the time came, you didn't need armies. You didn't need billions. You needed one phone number and the courage to dial it. 3 minutes and 47 seconds. That's all it took to undo years of manipulation, intimidation, and power games. Years of silence unleashed in less than 4 minutes. You spoke with the clarity of someone who had been sharpened by suffering. You gave names, dates, numbers, connections they thought buried. And the person on the other end, they had been waiting for you, hoping for you, praying for someone, anyone, who would finally have the courage to break the silence. You weren't just making a call. You were lighting a fuse they themselves had wired into their empire. And within hours, the first domino fell. Maybe it was an account frozen without warning. Maybe it was a subpoena arriving on a desk. Maybe it was just one reporter asking the wrong questions. But they felt it immediately. The air changed. The ground beneath them shifted. Their phones began ringing with calls they didn't want to answer. Their lawyers no longer sounded so certain. Their allies grew scarce, suddenly busy, suddenly unavailable. Even the stalkers they hired began disappearing, calling in sick, abandoning ship. Because even the rats know when the ship is sinking. And that ship was theirs. And the one who set it ablaze was you. The machinery they had meticulously built to crush you, a finely tuned engine of intimidation and legal pressure, suddenly sputtered and stalled. The investigators who had been documenting your every move, a veritable shadow army, suddenly found themselves with other, more pressing priorities. The lawyers who had been sending threatening letters with the weight of an entire corporation behind them suddenly and inexplicably recommended exploring settlement options. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a seismic shift. The entire operation ground to a halt because this kind of machinery needs operators, and operators can smell which way the wind is blowing. They'd terrorized and intimidated hundreds, maybe thousands, but they'd never encountered a single individual who had turned their systematic campaign of intimidation into a masterclass on how to fight back. Watch how fast billions of dollars become utterly worthless when the right people start asking the right questions. Watch how quickly all that power, that veneer of invincibility, evaporates when it's exposed to the harsh light of truth. They're probably in full-blown, panic-fueled damage control mode now, desperately throwing money at the problem like they always do. But here's the fundamental truth they forgot. The truth is incredibly expensive to bury and absolutely impossible to kill. Every single dollar they spend trying to contain the avalanche you started just creates more paper trails for the next investigator to find. Every person they try to silence becomes another potential witness, another person on the other end of a phone call. Every desperate, flailing move they make just proves what you said was true all along. You didn't just make a phone call, you started an avalanche, and avalanches don't care about your net worth. They're not sleeping well anymore, are they? Those luxurious, impossibly soft Egyptian cotton sheets on their California king beds must feel a little less comfortable when they're lying awake, waiting for the next shoe to drop. Their personal chefs are preparing gourmet meals for people who've completely lost their appetite. Their private jets, the ultimate symbol of their freedom, are fueled up for escapes they're not even sure they can make. You did something to them that all their money, all their power, all their influence can't fix. You put a deep, primal fear in hearts that had forgotten what fear felt like. You made them feel exactly what they'd made hundreds of others feel. And unlike them, you didn't need a team, a PR firm, or a fleet of lawyers to do it. You did it alone. This is the lesson they never teach you in business school. Real power isn't about what you can build. It's about what you can destroy with the truth. They spent decades constructing an elaborate house of cards, a complex web of lies, intricate schemes, and sprawling networks of mutual corruption. They had politicians in their pockets and police on their payroll. They thought they'd built something permanent, something too big to ever fail. But you understood a fundamental law of the universe that they completely missed. Every lie is a debt that eventually comes due. Every crime creates evidence, and every enemy they made was a potential ally for someone brave enough to unite them. The phone is ringing non-stop in their offices now, a relentless and terrifying soundtrack to their downfall. Investors are getting nervous, whispering in hushed tones. Their partners are reconsidering their associations. Board members are asking uncomfortable questions that have never been asked before. The name they spent a lifetime building, a name that used to open doors with a simple mention, is now making people step back. The invitations to exclusive clubs and events are drying up. The charity galas are finding other, less controversial honorees. Magazine covers are being redesigned at the last minute, because you can't be on the cover when you're being investigated. Money can buy you many things, but it can't buy you a good reputation once the truth has been exposed. It can't unexpose what's been exposed, It can't make people unknow what they now know. And they know it was you who did it. One person, one phone call, one single moment of perfect, devastating clarity. But here's the part that truly burns them. The part that keeps them up at night more than anything else. You're not gloating. You're not giving interviews. You're not writing a tell-all book. And you're not starting a podcast. You just made your call and went back to your life. And that terrifies them more than anything. They understand revenge. They understand greed. They understand wanting to be them. What they don't understand is someone who just wanted them to face consequences. Someone who didn't want their money, their life, or their power. Someone who just wanted the truth to matter more than their carefully constructed fiction. You have become their worst nightmare, a person they can't buy, can't threaten, and can't even begin to understand. How long did you wait? How many nights did you lie awake? The weight of what you knew pressing down on you, holding that nuclear option in your pocket like a grenade with the pin half pulled. They saw your silence and mistook it for weakness. They saw your patience and mistook it for paralysis. They thought every single day you didn't act was another day they'd won. But you weren't doing nothing. You were doing the hardest thing in the world. You were waiting for the perfect moment. And perfect moments, like perfect phone calls, are not stumbled upon. They are created. Every document you saved, every recording you made, every piece of evidence you gathered, it was all a deliberate, methodical, and patient construction of this very moment. While they were living their lives of excess, parading their wealth and their power, you were living like a spy in your own life, documenting, archiving, and preparing. They hired a team of professionals to watch you, but you were the one who was really watching. You saw their patterns, their vulnerabilities, their predictable cycles of arrogance and paranoia. You learned when they were strongest and when they were most exposed. You became a student of their destruction, while they were foolishly under the impression that you were just trying to survive. The waiting must have been excruciating. Watching them flourish while you struggled. Seeing them pop champagne while you were counting pennies. Knowing that you held their destruction in your hands, but not knowing if you'd ever have the courage to use it. There were probably moments you almost broke, when you almost made the call too early out of pure anger or desperation. But something held you back. Maybe it was wisdom, maybe it was strategy, or maybe it was just the profound understanding that revenge is a dish, best served not just cold, but at a time when it will do the most irreparable and lasting damage. You didn't just want to win, you wanted them to lose, forever. And you, let's be honest, you didn't just become a survivor. You didn't just become a fighter. You became a chef of consequences. Do you understand what that means? While they were busy throwing knives, you were busy collecting ingredients. Every insult, every provocation, every staged humiliation, every carefully sharpened blade they twisted into your side. You didn't react the way they expected. They wanted a show. They wanted you raw, emotional, sloppy. They wanted you to come out swinging so they could sidestep, counter, and paint you as reckless. They wanted to provoke you into becoming their script. But you didn't give them that satisfaction. You didn't play the part they wrote for you. Instead, you absorbed everything. Every jab, every attack, every fake smile that carried a hidden knife. You took it all in, and you didn't waste it. You let it simmer. You let it reduce. You let time do what time always does. Turn raw ingredients into flavor. Turn pain into wisdom. Turn fury into patience. You were making a dish they didn't even know existed, the meal of their own downfall. And you prepared it with the kind of patience only someone who has been starved of justice for years can understand. They thought they were winning because you didn't fight back on their timeline. They thought silence meant surrender. They thought restraint meant weakness. But the truth, restraint was your weapon. Patience was your power. Because when you finally moved, when you finally struck, it wasn't messy, it wasn't emotional, it wasn't reactive, it was surgical, precise. The kind of precision that doesn't come from rage, but from years of quiet planning. And that is something they had never seen before, because they live in a world where power is loud, impulsive, arrogant. They never imagined power could also be quiet, deliberate, and patient. Now let's step inside their heads for a moment. These people who've never once had to look over their shoulders, who built entire empires on intimidation and secrecy, who never questioned whether the sun would rise tomorrow with their names still untarnished on the skyline. They are learning fear. Not the kind of fear they used to sell to others with legal threats, financial pressure, and private investigators. Not the performative fear they forced into boardrooms and courtrooms. This is real fear. The kind that makes food taste like ash. The kind that makes every phone call feel like a countdown. The kind that makes the silence in their palatial homes echo with footsteps that aren't there. Right now, they're scrambling, running threat assessments, hiring new security, but not the kind that watches others, the kind that watches them. Guards stationed at their doors, not because of you, but because of what you unlocked, because you rang a bell that cannot be unrung. You showed the world that monsters can bleed, and when monsters bleed, it gives the people they stepped on, the employees they discarded, the partners they betrayed, the allies they burned, dangerous ideas. Suddenly their network doesn't look like a fortress anymore. It looks like a web of betrayals waiting to happen. Imagine their paranoia. Every former employee now looks like a threat. Every business partner feels like an informant. Every casual conversation becomes a risk. They're probably calling people at 2 in the morning, begging them to sign new NDAs, stronger NDAs, desperate NDAs. They're moving money out of visible accounts, burying assets, creating shell companies, and shredding documents at a frantic pace. But no matter how many safes they fill or vaults they hide, they can't lock up the truth. They can't track how much you told. They can't know how much you know. And that, not knowing, is the kind of fear that keeps them awake in rooms with blackout curtains, staring at ceilings, calculating how many enemies they made on the way up. Do you see what you did? You turned their strength into weakness. Their money is no longer insulation. It's evidence. Their network isn't protection anymore. It's exposure. Their carefully constructed empire isn't a fortress. It's a prison. You didn't have to chase them. You already struck. That phone call was both the opening shot and the killing blow. Everything happening now, every sleepless night, every frantic phone call, every lawyer's bill, isn't your doing anymore. It's gravity. You tipped the first domino, and now the rest is simply falling on its own. They keep waiting for your next move. They've got teams analyzing your every past action, your every connection, trying to predict where you'll strike again. But here's the brilliance. They don't realize there is no next move. You're not playing anymore. You've already won. With one phone call, you changed the rules of the game. With one truth, you flipped the entire board. And now they have to live in a world that you created. A world where their money doesn't buy safety, where their power doesn't guarantee silence, where someone like you can bring down someone like them. Do you want to know the exchange rate in this new economy you've created? The economy where lies used to dominate, where deception was the currency of the realm. Here it is. One truth, one clean, undeniable truth, is worth more than all their billions combined. It's not measured in dollars or euros or Bitcoin. It's measured in the collapse of certainty. It's measured in every loyal yes man suddenly becoming a hesitant maybe. It's measured in decades of careful construction unraveling in days. You didn't just speak truth to power. You proved truth is power. You showed the world that while they were banking on counterfeits, you were holding the real currency all along. Look at them now. They're liquidating, not just assets. Those are easy enough to move. They're liquidating relationships, cutting ties with people they once called allies, burning bridges they spent lifetimes building, because they can't tell which connections you've already exposed. They can't tell which allies have already flipped. They can't tell where the cracks are, so they treat everything as a crack. The very web that made them powerful now makes them vulnerable. Every hand they shake could be the hand that betrays them. Every meeting could be a leak. You turned their empire into quicksand, and now every step they take only pulls them deeper. And their lawyers? Oh, they're working overtime, drafting cease and desists, as if they could copyright reality. Trying to put legal barriers around the truth like it's some rogue piece of software that can be patched and contained. They're filing injunctions, writing memos, holding late-night conference calls, spending more on damage control than small nations spend on national defense. But here's the one thing they can't wrap their Harvard-educated heads around. You can't lawyer your way out of the truth. You can bury it. You can delay it. You can complicate it with paperwork. But truth is patient. Truth waits. And thanks to you, truth is no longer hidden in the shadows. It's out there now, multiplying, metastasizing, spreading faster than they can chase it. Watch them try to rebuild their reputation. Suddenly, donations to charities triple. Suddenly their faces appear in photo ops with orphans and disaster victims. Suddenly PR firms are spinning narratives about redemption, second chances, new commitments to transparency. Suddenly they've discovered a conscience. But everyone can see the timing. Everyone knows what prompted this sudden spirituality. Everyone knows what shook their world. And that's the beauty. You've turned their every move into an admission of guilt. Their every press release is a confession. Their every gesture of goodwill is a gravestone marking what you exposed. They thought they were untouchable. They thought fear was theirs to sell. But you, with one call, with one truth, showed them something they can never unsee. The monster bleeds. And once the monster bleeds, no one forgets it. And to everyone watching, this story isn't just about them. It's about us. About the proof that truth, when spoken, can shake foundations built on lies. Your support, your voice, your presence here, it's the kind of force that turns a whisper into an earthquake. For that, we are grateful beyond measure. So if this resonated, if you believe in what we're building, stand with us. Subscribe, share this message, and add your weight to the truth. Every view, every comment, every person who refuses to be silent. That's the kind of fear that keeps them awake at night, staring at ceilings in dark rooms, realizing the walls are closing in. This is only the beginning. And because of you, we have already won.